All right, welcome to the Love Well podcast. We had audio issues in take number one, so this is take number two. We're going to give this a go. Hopefully, hopefully it works. We lost audio last time out, and I think that we're looking okay now. For the sake of the recording, I am gonna start all over again. So welcome to the Love Well podcast. It's week 7,452,000 of the stay-at-home order here in Michigan. We're glad. I'm really glad you're with me this week. Hopefully, you find the Love Well podcast to be helpful to you. If so, I would encourage you to subscribe at danielemrose.com. I publish there 4 or 5 times a week, written and audio stuff. They get dropped right into your inbox. And then if you find it helpful after you've subscribed, invite somebody else to. I'd be really, really thankful if you would do that. Today's podcast recording session is being live streamed on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and as always, you can find the archive of the video live stream and video recording session at youtube.com/DanielRose. And so we are continuing our conversation on leading with grace. The last couple of weeks, we've looked at 2 of the 4 principles that shape my leadership in the church. And so what are they? Well, the first one was humility, and I think humility is the foundational leadership principle for those of us that are seeking to lead within the body of Christ, or really anywhere. And we need humility, because what humility does is it allows us to know ourselves. It allows us to know who we are. And apart from humility, we are lost. The second one was integrity. We absolutely need integrity to lead well. And then today we're going to be talking about community. Community within the context of the local church oftentimes can be one of the most controversial of these 4 principles. Now as we kind of work our way through this, I guess I want to say a little bit about why I'm doing this little series on leadership, and I think it's because as I look at the kind of training and things that I've received in leadership over the years, most of the principles that I've been taught and trained have come from the realm of business and politics. And as a result, they're basically teaching pastors, teaching leaders within the church how to gain and consolidate power. And very little of it has been about loving your neighbor well. Very little of it has been about caring for your neighbor. Very little of it has been what I would consider to be teaching us to kind of move in the ways of Jesus, which are to be grace-centered and mercy-oriented and loving your neighbor as yourself and loving your enemy. Really, really seeking to carry within us a self-sacrificial nature, right? To carry within us, the way Paul would say it, is the sufferings of Christ. We are so often taught strategies and means by which to get people to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it, and that is just so un-Christ-like, because as we look at the way Christ led, Jesus led through love. He led through grace. He led through mercy. He led by speaking truth, and there's no question there. And so I don't want to minimize that, but it was always couched in grace. It was couched in mercy. and respect of the other person. And too much of our leadership culture within American Christianity has been shaped, has been uh, fashioned to follow after business and politics, which is all about power. And so I thought I would take a few weeks and just kind of walk through some of the principles that have shaped my leadership over the last few years. These are principles that I've kind of cobbled together by watching good leaders, by reflecting back on times when I thought that I've loved well and led well. And these are the principles that really have surfaced. So in some ways, I'm doing this for me because I wanted to spend some time really thinking through leadership and really thinking through the ways that I want to lead. And as I talk about these things, man, you got to realize that I fail at this so much, and so much of what I'm saying to myself because I have not arrived. I don't do any of this perfectly. And so I need to walk back through these, and I need to listen back through this stuff to remind me of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, and remind me of what kind of leadership principles that I want to be about. And man, I as I've reflected on this stuff, I'm realizing how far I fall short and how much more work I need to do. So, yeah. So where have we been? Humility, integrity. This week we're working through what might be the most controversial of my leadership principles, which is community. So many of my colleagues have talked with me about how community is just something that's not really a thing. It's not really something that they can pursue as pastors. And if they do pursue it, it has to be somewhere far removed from the congregations they serve. And as a result, when you begin to look at different studies that are being done on pastoral mental health, what you find are just incredibly high rates of depression. You find high rates of isolation. You find great loneliness is rampant among my colleagues, and part of that is due to the loneliness. I think oftentimes stems from the uniqueness of what it is that we do as pastors. Like there's just not a lot of people, even our closest friends, who love us well, who serve alongside us as maybe as lay people, don't fully understand or can't fully understand the life of a pastor, and that's understandable. And that's part of it, right? I mean, this isn't to whine, but that's just part of what you take on. That's part of the life of the pastor, and probably I think in the same way as a lot of different professions. Thinking about just kind of where we're at culturally, there are, outside of those who are working in hospitals on COVID floors, there's not a lot of us that can really understand what they're going through. We can try to empathize and sympathize, but we are not going to really get it. And some of the doctor friends that I've talked to, they definitely are experiencing some loneliness. Now, you can experience loneliness but not be isolated. And I think this is where so many of my colleagues begin to walk down a very dangerous road towards isolation. And as they walk down isolation, that road of isolation, what happens is depression is ramped up, undiagnosed mental illness or hidden mental illness begins to really have a significant effect. And I think this is why over the last few years we are seeing more and more pastors take their own lives. Suicide has become just a significant issue within pastoral circles. And it seems like every week or 2 weeks, we hear of another relatively high profile pastor who takes their own life. And the stories are almost they're almost cookie cutter. Uh, they are people who have isolated themselves from any real community. They might know a lot of people, but they are not known and they don't feel known. And you see that come out in their stories. So community, which is something that is essential to us as human beings, to us, as we seek to to try to attempt to flourish as humans, we need one another. The story starts that way, right? Back in Genesis 1 and 2, it is not good for man to be alone. Now, so many people take that as just a statement of male female, and yeah, that's part of it. But the real issue there is community, right? We start with a triune God who existed from eternity past to eternity future, in perfect community, right? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, all existing in perfect community. And so for us to live as image bearers, as those who reflect the image of God in this world, we need community. And this is why God says it is not good for man to be alone, because we are not wired. We are not wired to go through this life alone, on our own, and in isolation. No man is an island, the poet said, right? And he was right. We are not islands. We need one another. And as we seek to lead, we need one another even more. So as I think about this community thing, not only do I think we need community kind of outside our congregations, but we need to be a people. By and large, pastors, we need to be those who are leading in community, in submitting ourselves to community within our congregations. And I know some of you are going to hear that and they're going to say, well, then you can't pastor people who are your friends. And I'm going to tell you that is absolutely false. That is a lie. That's just not true. The best way, that my best experience of pastoring people has been with my friends, people who I call my friends, people who have seen me in not my best, people who have seen me living an authentic, real life. They know that I am not perfect. They know that I am not some holy man who has everything together. They know that I struggle. They know that they know my weaknesses. They see them on display. And as a result, they love me anyway. And so I know that I'm accepted. I know that I'm cared for. And they know that they're accepted and they're cared for too. Because if I'm not perfect, then it's okay. It's okay that they're not perfect. And I can enter in with them. And I can walk alongside of them. So for my colleagues that are out there saying there's no way to pastor your friends, that's just an absolute lie. And until you deal with that lie, you are going to struggle to truly enter into the kind of community that we need to enter into as leaders. So we need a community that is based within the context that we're leading. We need people who are living life with us and not in some sort of sheltered way, right? No, we need people who are with us deeply, honestly, authentically within our spheres of influence. It's essential. It is essential. You see, community oftentimes now has become this buzzword, and so in some ways it's lost meaning, right? And especially in a time where anyone can walk away. You can just go to this church down the street, that kind of thing. And as a result, we don't do real community. We tend to stay in this place of what I call faux community or fake community. It's a community where there's no conflict. Until you have conflict and you emerge on the other side, I don't know if you've really had community or if you're really moving towards community. Because none of us are perfect. Man, none of us have it together. Right? And since none of us have it together, since none of us are able to live this life perfectly, guess what? We're going to step on one another's toes. Guess what? We're going to say the wrong thing. Guess what? We're going to have to go say, yo, I'm sorry. Man, I did not mean to hurt you. Or to say, hey, when you said that really hurt. Or when you did that really hurt. This is how I experienced that. How can I submit to you and move forward now in love and grace? These are the conversations that have to happen if we're going to really have community. But too many leaders think they have to have this perfect veneer where no, they don't make any mistakes. They have all the answers. And if anybody challenges you, well, those are wolves. And you know what we do to wolves? All that's a lie. My friends, all that is a lie. So what does it look like? What is it? How can you kind of evaluate whether or not you actually are living in community? Well, for a leader to live in community, we need people to say no. Do you have anybody within your congregation, anybody within your circle of friends that will tell you no? That will say, hey, that's a terrible idea. Or, hey, yeah, you're getting ahead of yourself. Early on in the life of the Acts 13 network, we were trying things. We were trying to figure out how to do this whole live as the church in the community thing, right? And I'll never forget, we had this great opportunity with with an apartment complex in Ypsilanti, where they had a community room, and one of the people that were part of our missional community early on lived in this apartment complex, and as a result had access to this space. And so we started using it for church, for worship on Sunday nights, and it was a great space. And after we'd done it for a little while, one of my friends called me up and said, Dan, we've been talking, and I think we're ahead of the Spirit here. We think that we're jumping ahead of where we need to be, and I think we need to rethink this whole worship thing, this whole gathering for worship that we're doing on Sunday nights, because it just doesn't seem in step with the Spirit. And they were really worried about telling me that. They were really worried. And they apologized over and as they're telling me this. And, did I like hearing that? No, I didn't like hearing that. My initial response in my gut wanted to be, you're wrong. I'm the pastor. I hear from the Spirit. I know. Thankfully, the Spirit kind of interceded in that moment and helped me to be humble, helped me to have integrity, and to respond by saying, yeah, let me think about that. I think you might be right. And then you know what happened is I turned that question around to some other people who all of us were in community with. So what do you guys think? And to a person, everyone was like, yeah, we're ahead. We're moving too far ahead here. And, and we wouldn't have, and that shaped that has shaped so much of our life as community. The ability for us to challenge one another, the ability for us to say no to one another, the ability for those who I'm in community with as a pastor to say, brother, we're out of step with the Spirit here. We need to rethink this, and we need to kind of we need to say no here, and that's saying no. And we're going to get to this. I'm going to save the next story. In this, we need people who, as leaders, we need people who will challenge us. We need people in our community who will force us to think about things, who will push back and make us wrestle, who aren't just going to be yes people, but are going to challenge our thinking, that are going to challenge us to be the best version of ourselves. We need that, and we need people. We need people who, as they're engaging with us, are seeing us begin to break in unhealthy ways, right? Who can challenge us when we start walking down these roads where we're looking to simply consolidate and gather power. We're not going to have that apart from having a deep, abiding, authentic, real community with people in our congregation. We have to. We have to have this. We have to have this. Now, so we need people to say no. We need people to challenge us. We need a community of people who will fill our blind spots. As leaders, too often we think that we have it all figured out, that we don't need anybody, but we do. We need a community of people around us who are strong where we are weak. Right? None of us have everything 100% figured out. This is one of my favorite leaders was Abraham Lincoln. If you haven't read Doris Kearns Goodwin's book on Lincoln, man, you need to go look it up. It's super good, and it's really helpful because she talks about how he built his leadership with rivals. He found all the people who challenged him, but who filled his gaps, and he was able to create a team of leaders, and that were whole, right? In Ephesians chapter 4, you have Paul talking about this. You have Paul talking about how we need apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, teachers. You need kind of this fivefold group of people. Nobody has it perfectly. Nobody has all five of these different kinds of strengths, figured out. We need them all, and that demands a leadership community. That demands us to bring others in and bring others along with us. I am not, I'm not somebody who has it figured out. I know where my strengths lie. I know that I'm way more on kind of this apostolic, entrepreneurial teaching edge. That's kind of where I live. I'm not the best shepherd. So I've needed to have people around me who care about people, who love people well, and help me learn how to do that. Otherwise, I would just be running over people. And this is what a community does. Is it fills our blind spots. We also need people. We need a community of people who will protect us from us, who will protect you from you, is what I have written down here. I need folks around me who when I start going to those bad places, when I start walking, giving, kind of yielding to my to my core lie, when I start going to that dark place, when I start isolating, when I start hiding, I need people who will protect me from me. And I can't have that. Um, and I really can't have that if my community is at a distance, right? I have some really good friends that I talk to every day via text message, but they don't live here, and it's super easy to hide. It is so easy to hide from them. I can engage and talk via text all the time, and they'll think everything is great. But guess what? They don't see the other stuff. They don't see the moment by moment. They don't see my life. They don't see if I'm really isolating from community. Now my congregation, my friends, my community that I serve, they do see that. If I'm constantly hiding out at my house, if I am constantly saying no to invitations to come hang out and spend time with people, they know that I'm isolating, and they can protect me from myself. We need people to protect us from ourselves. If we are leaders, if you're a leader, you need people to protect you from you. Because otherwise, if we're left to our own devices, life just stops working, and it just gets really, really hard and overwhelming. So we need people to protect us from us. And that kind of goes with that. We need people to challenge us, right? Yeah. Like, I think about the way that the leadership team, we call them elders in our community. But my team of leaders that are around me, I don't know, last week, 2 weeks ago, they're like I usually do a little podcast for them as leaders, and it had been a really heavy emotional week in my personal life, and they knew it had been a heavy week, and I hadn't gotten that little podcast done, and I hadn't done some of the different things that I typically do to try to provide them a value add for leading and that kind of thing. And so I just messaged them and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I know I'm late on this stuff. I'm going to get it out soon." And their response was, "Dan, you've had a heavy week. It's been emotional. It's been hard. Don't worry about it this week, man. We need that for next week when you're going to be out of town, but just let it go." They protected me from me, but the only way they could do that was if I had been in deep enough community with them so that they knew it had been a heavy week. And too many of my colleagues don't have people in their lives who know when they have heavy weeks, when they know that it's hard. And so they don't have people who can protect them from themselves. And the last thing, we as leaders, we need people who will love us. You need a community of people who will love you. And I think that's what all these things really point to, right? Is a people that community ultimately is a group of people who love you. It's a group of people who will care for you. It's a group of people that put you ahead of them. And as leaders, that's our first calling, right? Is to put others ahead of ourselves. Is to love others. For us to do that, we have to be loved too. Right? Jesus says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." So the love that we can extend to others truly is limited by the love that we have for ourselves, and not in some narcissistic way, but in a true and authentic kind of loving way. And so we need people who will love us. We need people who will accept us for who we are. For me, that means people who are going to accept me even in spite of the fact that I talk before I think, that are going to accept me even though I'm loud and obnoxious, that are going to accept me, um, even if I don't say the right things in the right way all the time. People who are going to accept me, even when I maybe unintentionally am like a bull in a china shop at times. That's to be loved is to be accepted and embraced by a community of people, and as leaders, we need that. We desperately need that. I had served on an organization that claimed to be, one that was all about loving and caring for its people. They claimed to be a family, and yet at every turn, all you were met with was, this is how you're failing. This is how you're wrong. This is how you're not perfect. This is how you're unacceptable. These are the things that you absolutely have to change. If you can't do this, you can't lead. If you can't do it, was just a constant barrage of unacceptance, uncaring, and a lack of love. And that is where so many leaders live. And my friends, it does not have to be that way. It doesn't. And I know some of you are listening to this whole thing about community, and you're going, man, there is no shot that I can have this in my church. There is no shot that I can have this and lead in this community. And if that's the case, then look for, maybe it's time to move. Maybe you're just in the wrong place. But two, don't underestimate the role that you have as a leader. Don't underestimate the reality that you get to shape the culture in your congregation. You as the pastor can shape so much of how this thing looks and what this thing looks like. And if you get burned by being real, by being honest, by being authentic, by seeking to build community and relationship in your congregation, then that's not on you. That's on them. And they will continue to burn out pastors left and right, over and over. So, as we seek to lead, we absolutely have to be intentional about community. We have to be intentional about building community. We have to be intentional about modeling it, and about being the first one to embrace it and to enter in. And that's not easy, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it. I cannot tell you how worth it is. Now that I'm leading in a congregation that is filled with my friends, where I am living in community every single day with those whom I serve, I wouldn't trade it for anything. So, we're 3 words in of 4 in leading with grace: humility, integrity, community. Next week, we wrap this series up, and we talk about presence. So, not with a T, but with an ENCE. And so I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you think about this series. Let me know what maybe you'd love to, what you'd be interested in hearing in future podcast episodes. I would love to engage with you, and you can do that real easily. One, by subscribing to Love Well, comment on things there. You can always follow me on Twitter at Daniel M. Rose, and I would love to engage with you. On Twitter. You can find the archive of this message at youtube.com/Daniel Rose. And as you've heard me talk a little bit about our congregation, the way that we're trying to live as believers in this world, maybe you want to check us out and check things out, and you can connect with us in our missional communities. You can get those details at acts13.net/events. And right now, everything is via Zoom, and that information to connect with our missional communities located on the website. And I hope to see you around. I would love to hear from you. So please connect with me. Either comment here wherever you're watching this, or hit me up on Twitter, and let me know what you'd like to see for podcast series in the future. For those of you that are watching online, I'm going to stick around and answer any questions that you might have from today's podcast episode. And for those of you that are listening via podcast, thanks for listening and thanks for stopping by. And until next week, love well, my friends. All right, guys. Yeah, I truly appreciate you hanging out. Being online with me, and would love to see if there's if you have any questions, any thoughts on what's on anything I said here. If there's anything, anything that you find helpful, or any questions that you might have, let me know. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes and see what else. See if you guys have any questions. So, thanks for bearing with me in my technical glitch last time out. I'm not sure what happened. I tried some new hardware, so I need to figure that out a little bit more. I probably should have tested it before going live, huh? So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions. You guys got any thoughts? All right. Well, hey, I'll be going live again Sunday morning as we continue our songs and sayings, as we walk through Psalms and Proverbs. And this week we'll be looking at a Psalm. So join me 10:45 Sunday morning. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Thanks again for stopping, guys. Bye.